Hi everybody, my name's Simon and I'm very much looking forward to seeing you and spending time with you on your church weekend. Andrew asked me to record 3 short videos answering the questions: who am I, how do I know Andrew, and why do I love Jesus? So first of all, who am I? I'm still trying to work that out. I'm a 60-year-old man suffering from male pattern baldness. I'm married to Wendy, and we have 2 daughters in their mid to late 20s, and I've got a back catalogue of dad jokes that make all of my girls roll their eyes and sometimes even punch me in the arm. At Christmas, I retired from teaching after 36 and a bit years, and I'm still adapting to retirement. The bit about not going to work I've mastered quite easily, but I'm still working through the issues of what to do instead. I love cooking. Nothing makes me happier than seeing the people I love around a full table. I love music, and I frequently get into trouble for buying CDs at local charity shops. And I love the Lake District and walking there with my youngest daughter, who takes great joy in seeing me fall over pretty much every time we go out. I spend a lot of time driving up to the Scottish borders to visit my elderly parents, who are getting smaller every time I go to see them. Wendy and I have been going to Gateway Church, our local community church, for the last few decades, and we've watched our girls grow up in the wonderful youth work there. Anyway, anything else you need to know about me, feel free to ask when we meet, although I can say that my DBS check has come back clean. So, how do I know Andrew? Andrew is my oldest friend, which is not to say that I don't have older friends, but me and Andrew go back a long way. We first met at secondary school, St Leonard's Roman Catholic Comprehensive in Durham, where Andrew was extremely good at football, good at art. He had a cheeky sense of humour and he could run very fast, which at times was probably the thing that saved him. So we were just a couple of daft teenage lads who egged each other on to do stupid things. We had very different tastes in music. Andrew introduced me to Frank Zappa, and I once made him to sit through a whole of Verdi's Aida. It's a miracle we're still friends. What's wonderful is that despite being directionless teenagers, God intervened in our lives roughly around the same time. Just like Simon and Andrew were brothers in the Gospels, we've also become brothers and followers of Jesus. And we've seen each other get married and have 2 daughters each, and it's been very helpful at times to compare notes and scars, especially during the tough teenage years. We're now 2 60-year-old codgers. Andrew only has marginally more hair than me, and whenever we get together, it's like the intervening time just melts away and we can regress back to our teenage selves while still appreciating everything that God has done in our lives since then. So now to the big question: what do I love about Jesus? For me, Jesus is the expression of God's deepest desire, which is to be with us and for us to be with him. Fundamentally, God wants to hang out with us and for us to be able to enjoy who he is. And Jesus is the means by which all this is possible. Jesus reveals God's character to us, God's nature. The omniscient, eternal God has poured himself into a human being so that we can understand what he's like at a level that suits us. John's Gospel says that Jesus came from the Father full of grace and truth. He's the most joyful person who's ever walked this earth, the most fully alive person, and he encourages us to join in and receive that fullness of life too. I love Jesus because he's the polar opposite of the kind of worldly leadership that we're seeing sadly on display at the moment. Rather than enriching himself, he emptied himself. He consistently went out on a limb to welcome the poor and the marginalised, rather than scapegoating the most vulnerable members of society. Jesus refused to glorify himself or to sacrifice principle as a means of gaining power. Instead, he chose the path of sacrificial love, and he trusted that the Father would vindicate this choice. I love the words of Charles Wesley's famous hymn, which says, "Jesus, thou art all compassion, pure unbounded love thou art." So if you ask, why do I love Jesus? It is, of course, because he first loved me.